traditionally very, very important, but they were very significant because of their economic strength. So these were some very important linguistic ethnic groups who were there in Kolkata in the late 18th century. And then we come across a very large population of the Chinese ethnicity. And it is very interesting that possibly in the whole world, there are two China Bazaar in Kolkata. One in Tangra and another in Teriti Bazaar. And there were possibly around 20,000 Chinese ethnic people who stayed in Kolkata at that point of time. The situation started changing after 1962 because of the Sino-Indian ethnic conflict. After that time onwards, we find slowly the Chinese population, they started ebbing out. But still, it is a very interesting factor that a Chinese newspaper is printed in Kolkata with a circulation around 500 to 300 every day. So the Chinese population, it remains a very important factor. Along with that, we find Anglo-Indian population, and they are located in some significant zones of Kolkata. These Anglo-Indians, they are a kind of mixture, mestizo population. Their main language was English, and some of them, for instance, the present Rajya Sabha MP, Derek O'Brien, his father, the phenomenal quiz master, Neil O'Brien, and for instance, the musician, V. Balsara, they all belonged to that population. And still now, there are some areas like the Bo Barrack, which is the location of this Anglo-Indian population, and they have a gala festival during the New Year and during that part of the time. So they were important group, but dwindling population because of many of these people to Australia and other places. For instance, Cliff Richards, he was born in Kolkata, later shifted to America or England, possibly. Now, such kind of population and the travails of these now isolated population. For instance, Aparna Sen, in her film 36 Chaurangi Lane, she talks about the travails of a single Anglo-Indian lady. So that shows us that the Anglo-Indian population, they were an important part. For instance, De Rosio, who was one of the pioneers of the Bengal Renaissance as such, who was a teacher, iconic teacher in the Hindu college. He belonged to this this Anglo-Indian population as such. He belonged to the Portuguese Indian lineage. So it was a mestizo population. Then we come to the Sindhi community. They were a very important community who were the merchants from Thatta, and they came to, they started coming to Kolkata by 18th century. And still, some population, Sindhi population, though they have mixed up with the normal population of Kolkata, but still the distinctiveness of the Sindhi population, it remains in the cuisine. The distinctive Sindhi cuisine, it is there. And then we come across the Sikh population. Already we have seen, according to 2011 census, there were around 15,000 Sikh population. The population again started dwindling, but there is a very interesting phenomena which has been worked by one of a major historian of the Sikh community over India. He is Himadri Banerjee, who talks about the Sikhs who are staying in Kolkata. They are not from Punjab. Most of them, they have come from Bihar. And this started with uh, Guru Guru Tegh Bahadur when he visited Patna. The converts into Sikh religion, they started coming in Kolkata because of the opportunities available, and they are distinctive from the Punjabi Sikh community because of their distinctive culture. They use Bengali, they wear dhoti in Bengali fashion, and they are known as the Agrahari Sikhs who have come from Patna. And along with Guru Parav, they also celebrate Durga Puja and Kali Puja as well. So this is the distinctiveness of the Sikh community in in Kolkata. Then I come to the Bihari migrants, the people from Bihar, initially who were pressed into action because of the burgeoning need for workforce. When the city was growing, a huge amount of Bihari population, they have come, who came from the western Bihar and eastern part of Uttar Pradesh, from the Purvia region, who spoke the Bhojpuri. There is a very famous song in Bhojpuri which says that Railiana Bairi, Jahajiana Bairi, Bairi Naukari, Bairi Ho. It is not rail which has separated myself from my beloved. It is not the ships which has separated me from the beloved, but it is the nokri. It is the job which has separated my husband or my beloved from me. So this is the population, and there are in the recent times also this migration from Bihar, it continues. So Bihari migrant population, they remain a very significant portion of the Kolkata population. Then I talk about a very significant section of Kolkata population, that is the South Indians, who the Bengali middle class, because of their parochial nature, so I belong to the same class, we generally distinguish this population and kind of essentialize them. For instance, the Marwari population. From Rajasthan, there is a significant population. The Bengali middle class culturalism has distinguished them as Mero, a kind of derisive term for them. For instance, from Odisha, who came, the Bengali middle class, they used to categorize them as Ure from Odisha. And mainly, they are engaged in, or they were engaged in those days, either as cooks in the houses of the rich, nouveau-riche population, or they were engaged as the gardeners in the sprawling gardens of those people. Now, the South Indian population, they were considered as Madrasi or Madrasi. Everybody. There is no distinction between Tamil speaking, Malayali speaking, then the Telugu speaking, or the Malayali speaking people. All were considered as the Madrajis. So they were there, and you will be I won't say astonished, but you will be kind of you will draw pleasure from the fact that there was a very vibrant Tamil Sangam, the cultural association of the Tamil speaking population. It was very, very active in the 1920s, 1930s. And the founder of the Tamil Sangam was none other than C.V. Raman, the physicist who won the Nobel Prize, who was working in one of the research institutes of Kolkata, cultivation of science, and later he was inducted in Calcutta University. And it was the famous philosopher, I'm forgetting the name, Radhakrishnan. So the later Indian president and the Nobel laureate, they were the founders of this Tamil Sangam. It is in a very sorry state of affairs now because of the exodus of the Tamil speaking population. I am a kind of fountain pen enthusiast. And one of the Indian fountain pen makers, ASA, its founder is Subramaniam, one Subramaniam sir. I generally speak to him, and he talks chaste Bengali better than any Bengali. And he told that he used to grow up in a particular location which is known as the Lake Market region. It was known as the Tamil zone in Kolkata. So this was the situation of the Tamil speaking population. I come from Calcutta University. In Calcutta University, the Tamil department, it employed Ranganayaki Mahapatra, one of the finest exponents of Tamil language in outside Tamil Nadu. She has passed away some time back. And we have a street which is named by Bharatiya. Subramania Bharatiya street is there. So the Tamil and the South Indian population, they represented a very significant portion of, not numerically, but culturally, they have presented many good things to Kolkata. So I come to an end. Kolkata then and now was peopled by people from all over the Oriental world. Armenians, Baghdadi Jews, Chinese, Parsis, Portuguese, the British and the Dutch communities, and Northeast people. People from Northeast, they are now coming in a very big number in Kolkata. Because of, I think, the attraction of the Chinese taste bud for momos. So huge amount of people all over the world, all over India, and from beyond India as well. They have come, made Kolkata as their home, though there are some frictions as well, which will remain because of the distinct ethnic identities. But otherwise, this huge population, the Urdu speaking Muslims, the Bengali speaking Muslims, they all have stayed in Kolkata for almost 200, 300 years now, and we all live peacefully, sharing our language as well as culture, and culture includes cuisine as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Mukhopadhyay. If you have any question, you may please raise your hand. We will do it later. Yeah, I think I'll take question, couple of questions. Yeah. Before people forget what he has said.
In a very short time, you have given us a picture which is very, very interesting. Just to add something to that and get one or two lines from you, you know that there was a sizable elite Assamese presence in Calcutta, and somehow we don't find that kind of those kind of family
References.
So one, if you have something on that, and you have brought in Hindi speaking people, but there was a sizable Urdu speaking people in Calcutta, and they maintained a kind of cultural and linguistic identity. There was a time when even the Persian newspapers came out from Calcutta. So one or two lines on those. And one line I would like to add from my side, that Calcutta was more cosmopolitan in 1940s than now. One or two quick lines, if you want.
Sure. Thank you. He is a good friend of mine. I missed, because of the paucity of time, I missed about the Urdu speaking people. First, Urdu. Not only Urdu, Arabic as well as Persian. For instance, Maulana Azad, he initially started after he returned back from Egypt, after the completion of his education. He stayed in Kolkata and he published his newspapers from Kolkata. So Kolkata saw publication of Arabic, Persian, and Urdu newspapers. Urdu is still being spoken by a sizable portion of the Muslim population, but because of different cultural reasons, because of the ghettoization, I would say, that they are confined in certain pockets. For instance, Raja Bazar, or some pockets in, say, the Metia Buruj. Metia Buruj is the place where Wajid Ali was exiled. He stayed there, and it is said that biryani, it is a gift of Wajid Ali and his tradition, which enriched the Kolkata cuisine. And Kolkata biryani is very different from Hyderabadi or any biryani from any other parts of the world and in India. So, Urdu speaking population still remains a very significant portion of Kolkata, and um obviously they have enriched the Calcutta culture. Regarding Assamese, I have not come across much. So I will restrain myself at this point of time, but I will surely search about it. But interesting, very interesting. One of my students, while we were working on a project that is Look East, he was given a task, very interesting, and he is mm, uh, very young researcher. He has come across, before the abolition of slavery, 1841 was the abolition of slavery. Before that, the European population, they have recruited, he has traced some 500 plus people who were recruited as slaves from Southeast Asia. So it is not only the Burman or the Assamese, but such kind of Southeast people from Southeast Asia, they also have come and just vanished within the Kolkata space because he could not trace their lineage. First of all, they were slaves, and most time we come across is the reference to when they have fled the master's house when there was a police report regarding the flight of any slave as such. But it is a very interesting phenomenon. And regarding any other thing that you are talking about? Surely, surely. I think that we are losing. It is becoming a bilingual city, mostly Bangla and Hindi. But the multilingual space that a city was, or Calcutta was, that Kolkata is losing now. But I will reserve my further observations to my next presentation, which is at 7 o'clock.
Thank you so much. Yeah, just one more question and we'll go to the next presentation and we'll continue with the discussion. I have so much to say and ask you as well because there are parallel phenomenon that we will see in Manipur itself. Yeah.
I am myself making questions too much short from Firangi Kalibadi, and I am going up to the Trepti, Armenians, Nepalis, Nepal origin, and Nepali in Calcutta.
Acha.
Only these one.
Acha. What he referred to, it is a very interesting phenomena. Firangi Kalibadi. Firangi, it is for the white people, the Europeans, who are known as the Firangis. And there was a kind of singer in the early 19th century. We find such kind of presentations, particularly the Sawyeries being presented, which was known as a conflict of or fight between two poets, singers, which was known as Kobir Lorai, a fight between two Kobi or poets. One such famous poet or kavi was Antony Firingi, who was originally or born uh, Portuguese, but he took Bengali song as his mode of expression. And he had established a Kalibadi, which is known as Firingi Kalibadi. So that is a wonderful piece of information that you have
How
given.
interesting. Yes.
And anything else that you are talking?
I think we'll go to the next
Armenians.
Oh, okay.
Armenian churches were there, and still it is there. And most Armenian colleges there, which was founded in the 19th century. And most of the documents of the Armenian people who had come from New Julfa region, along with the growth of burgeoning of the Mughal Empire, these Armenian merchants used to come, and they made Kolkata their home. They played very important role in the 18th century. They played a role in the Palasi and post-Palasi region time as well. But most of the documents that they had, which was archived in the Armenian College, after the birth of Armenian Republic, most of the documents, they have been shifted to Armenia. So we don't have access to those very important historical documents regarding the role of the Armenian merchants in Kolkata.
Thank you so much, Professor Mukhopadhyay. We will continue with the discussion because I would want to engage with you as well. But we will go on to the next presentation. Then we can please take 15 minutes, Kavita.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to talk about a topic that I feel so passionately about. And before I actually begin today's discussion, I would like to very briefly talk about my own experience of growing up in the city, Delhi. You know, I grew up in cantonment town, and I've spent most of my time in various campuses across the city. So Delhi for me for the longest time was all about these routes that I had encountered while traveling in DTC buses. You know, that long tiring route that Bahari Mudrika takes before you actually reach where you want to reach, right? And even when I started teaching, I would take an auto from West Delhi, which will take you through Lutyens Road and then to CP, and then all the way to Zagrasan College, which is just next to Old Delhi. And when I started working in a South Campus college, again, you know, in South Campus, in South Delhi, you can't find rickshaws. So what you need to do is either you drive your own car, you take you take an auto, or you just use the metro, right? So what you realize is that on a single daily basis, what you're encountering is different versions of the same city, right? So you start with the chaotic, crowded, marketplaces of West Delhi, which have their own vibrant energy, right? And then you move on to Central Delhi, which is so well planned, right? And there's so much greenery that you almost feel like that you're in a different city, right? And then you have, Delhi specifically is a city which, he spoke at length about Kolkata, the same obsession being a Delhiite about Delhi, right? You have so many monuments, so many ruins around the city, wherever you go, east, west, south, right? Which have their own beauty. You know, there's so much charm to it, and you're constantly reminded of the fact that the city has a historic relevance, right? So when I began my research, I began with this very basic question of what is it that the city is trying to tell you? Which very interestingly happens to be the topic of today's conversation, the city speaks. right? So I hope that some of you know that they say that there are 7 cities of Delhi, and actually there are more than that. So there's Lalkot, there's Mehroli, there's Siri, you have Firozabad, Tughlakabad, Shahjahanabad, and Shergarh, and New Delhi being the 8th one, right? So let's say if I want to, I'm someone who wants to understand my city, how do I do that? Because there are these 7 different versions of the same city. And if I want to understand my city in its totality, then what I need to do is I need to go back and understand all about all these 7 cities that people have written about. But the problem is people are writing about these cities in different languages. So what do I do? Right? So you have Amir Khusro, who writes in a combination of Bridge, Persian, and Hindavi. You have Mir Taki Mir and you have Ghalib, who are writing in Urdu and Persian. And of course, you have Hindi writers and you have English writers who are talking about the city, right? Uh, so if I have to understand this city, if I have to understand any urban space, what I need to do is it necessitates the presence of a multilingual audience, right? Because there are 7 different versions of the city. People have written about it in different languages. And to understand the city as it is now today, what I will need to do is I need the presence of a multilingual audience. But as he rightfully said, we are moving more and more towards a society which is becoming bilingual, right? And for me, the only way I can assess these different pasts which are there to the city is by reading authors who are writing about the city in English. But again, that's very interesting because I'm reading a translation. I'm reading a writer who's talking about a city which speaks Hindi, and he's writing about that in English, and I'm trying to understand, okay, this is what he means. So the very idea of translation, if we actually look at it, again requires and necessitates that there is a population, there is someone at least who knows more than one language. Now, this is again a very tricky situation, right? Because someone is translating the text for me. How do I understand the problem of, let's say, talking about a city which doesn't speak English, but I'm writing about them in English? How do I understand that? Right? Because every city, if you actually look at it, not just city, in fact, all cities and all languages have their own rhythm. They would tell you, that the pace at which Bombay and the pace at which Delhi moves is very different from, let's say, the pace of some other cities, right? So every city has its own unique sensorial experience at the pace at which it moves. It has its own rhythm. And you need a language which can actually express that city well, right? And then talk about the city in that language. Now, I would like to mention here we have Ahmed Ali. He has written this very interesting and very classic piece of work, Twilight in Delhi, where he talks about, he talks about Delhi at a very specific time period. This is pre-partition, pre-independence Delhi, right? And his wife translated the book in English, in Urdu. And people who read the Urdu version said this book could not have been written in English because, look at this city. This is a very specific city. It has its own sounds which create the city. It has its own sight, these visuals which end up making up the city. And English does not have that vocabulary to describe that experience, right? So how do I talk about it? And this is where you see that a lot of Indian English writers are actually experimenting with English brilliantly. Like Khushwant Singh, when you read his Delhi novel, what he does is his language is such that it constantly tells you that this is not your standardized version of English, right? What he's doing is he's trying to capture the way Delhi sounds, right? So you will have Hindi, but again, we don't speak the same Hindi. We speak different dialects of Hindi. And that Hindi comes along with bits of Punjabi somewhere, and being most of us are at least bilingual people, and very easily, you transition from Hindi to Tamil to Assamese or some other language, right? And you're constantly switching from one language to the other. Now, let's say if I want to capture that in my text, because I want my novel, I want my piece of writing to sound like Delhi sounds. What do? I need to experiment with words. So what he does is, he plays with the language, right? He wherever instead of saying foreign, he says foreign. America becomes American, right? Then he says Japanese embassy, instead of being ending with a Y, ends with double E, right? Then also another thing that you notice in his writing is that what he does is he's also translating a lot of things which Indian audience would otherwise know. Like for example, he's telling you what a Mangal Sutra means. An Indian audience, even if you are someone who speaks English and I can't read Hindi, let's say, even then I would understand what's the cultural context of a Mangal Sutra. But he's translating it for me, which means that as a writer, he knows that I'm writing for an Indian audience, but I'm also writing for an international audience, an audience which reads in English, but probably is also multilingual, right? So again, the process of translation is there, right? And the job of the writer in such a situation is actually more of that of an interpreter who's translating a culture for you, right? And another thing which I really find interesting, and I think is very central to the idea of city, what the previous speakers have talked about, is the idea of migrants in the city, right? It's the migrants who come together and make the city what it is. They say that Delhi does not belong to anyone; it belongs to everyone, right? You have people coming from all kinds of places and coming and making the city what it is. And this is one of the reasons why you'll see that when you look at songs, or when you look at, let's say, various scenes in films, you'll see there are these scenes which are specifically devoted to the gaze of the outsider. So you have someone coming to the city and he's gazing at the city, and you are looking at the city from his perspective. Look at a song like, Zara Hatke Zara Bachke Ye Hai Mumbai Meri Jaan, or Ye Delhi Hai Mere Yaar, Yahan Sirf Ishq Mohabbat Pyar. It's almost like you're entering the city and someone is telling you, okay, look at it, this is what the city looks like. You need to become a part of it in order to be accepted here, right? And the migrant figure is constantly doing what? Is constantly engaging with the city, which is so scary, which is so intimidating, which is so different. And this is where, I find Ravish Kumar's work very interesting. In Ishq Mein Sheher Hona, there's this line where he says, दिल्ली के लाखों मकानों में न जाने कितने शहर बसते हैं, right? And I think I don't need to explain it to you. You can understand, right? You are carrying your own cities, and there are so many people from different parts of the country with all kinds of dreams, all kinds of aspirations coming to the city. And he's talking about that. He's talking about being intimidated by this girl who's carrying the book of Bernard Shaw, and he's looking for a girl who can read Premchand, right? He's talking about how someone who eats dal bhat achar comes to Delhi and learns to appreciate eating prawn. And when you look at Delhi, for example, when you're looking at specifically, let's say for example, when you say because you have a sizable number of, let's say, people from Bihar being in Delhi, means the people of this place are introduced to the idea of litti chokha. And look at the cuisine that we have. The previous speaker again talked about it. Look at the cuisine that we have, right? You have litti chokha. The number of South Indian restaurants that we have, North Indians, most of the time when they go to eat in restaurants, the South Indian food that we order, right? So you have litti chokha, you have your idli dosa, and then you have your chole bhature. And where is this coming from? And I specifically, personally, I feel that the space of the bazaar in that sense is very interesting because it's very demanding on your senses. And in comparison to, let's say, air conditioned spaces, the bazaar is a space which actually does what? It evokes the city in all its multisensorial experiences that one can possibly think of. Like anyone, I mean, there are a lot of youngsters here. Going to Sarojini Nagar is not complete if you don't have momos with kala khatta. Now, what is this strange combination of momos and kala khatta? This only Delhiites can get it, right? And I have a very because a lot of youngsters are here again. There is this whole, with globalization, there is this rise of K-pop, K-culture, etc. And you see specifically, at least in South Delhi, there are a lot of Korean restaurants that have sprung up, and they are serving you vegetarian kimchi. And I strongly believe, as Indians, give us any dish, any exotic dish around the world, and we can make a masala fried, a tadka version of it. I'm very sure of it, right? So, when you put it together, you know, uh, what is it that the city is trying to tell you? That city spaces are very dynamic spaces. And language is something which is constantly evolving in the process of evolving itself. And the city in that process is also evolving. It's constantly evolving. There's no static culture which can define this or that city. The very idea of a city, given the fact that you have people coming from different places, coming together and interacting with each other, means that you're going to end up in a situation which is going to be multilingual, multicultural, whether you're talking about it in terms of cuisine, or you're talking about it in terms of language, or look at in terms of fashion, for example. I recently went to Sarojini Nagar, and the market was flooded with this very, Chinese and Korean type of jackets. I'm sure you guys can get it, right? With the checkered winter jackets, which are now the in thing, because you have K-pop and you have all K-drama being there, right? So with this, I think I would end my discussion.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Kavita. Thank you. We will take questions for Kavita. If there is anybody who has no question.
See, so beautifully you have observed and explained. Is it also somewhere published? Is it also somewhere published? Unfortunate. And then ये जितने मकान उतने शहर जो बात है उस पे लगातार
It's most stimulating, both the speakers, and I have things to say for both of you. Because I think as you were presenting, sir, Professor Mukherjee, we were talking a lot about Calcutta and the cosmopolitan city that it is since forever. And I was thinking in terms of, let me start with my story, because I come from Infal, the godforsaken urban space. So it's a war-torn zone. But then in that tiny little town, it's quite cosmopolitan in its way. We have, like you said, we have the traders from Bihar, migrant workers. We have people from a Sikh community since the partition. And as Marwari traders, of course, and we have a category called Pangal. Pangal are Manipuri Muslims. It is the corrupt word for Bengal. Bengal, and then from Bengal is Pangal, and it's from the partition of Bangladesh and India. And then there are over 60 or 70 tribal languages. And then you have, of course, the dominant Meitei speakers. So in all of this, I grew up in Infal, where all of these were spoken around me. But dominantly, what is interesting is I do a little research on my PhD chapter. I have a chapter on the transition from oral to print. So you might be very interested in to know that Manipuris were writing in Bengali script. And then, but what is interesting is I grew up writing Bengali script, but in Manipuri language, and I'm a tribal girl. And then in one of the first newsletters in my tribal dialect was written in Bengali script. And it was not Manipuri, it was Bengali script, but then only few people were in circulation of that. The Bihari, among the Bihari migrant workers, and they are domicile of Manipur. And there is a little village, kind of a place called Telipati. Teli is the caste, the oil traders. So you would find how interesting that in Manipur we mostly take only mustard oil. So in our cuisine, you would find that we don't use sunflower oil or any other oil, but mustard oil. I cannot live without mustard oil even now. And so you may think that momos were part of we are the Madrasi of Delhi now. Like the entire northeast is like northeast, and we take momo. We don't take momo. This is not our native food. But our native food for me is something that is chana fried in mustard oil. You see, so the languages that we come across, and then the influence of Bengali Bengali language is not only in terms of script, but also in terms of a theater, for example, or performative art. And Manipuri, Manipuri proscenium theater was started in imitation with Calcutta proscenium theater, and Calcutta proscenium theater was an imitation of London Victorian proscenium theater. So in that, the first plays that were performed in those theaters were in Manipuri, in Meitei Lawn, but the songs were in Bengali. And so you see the trading of, but and also like you would find Manipuri refined, sophisticated, educated Manipuri using a lot of Bengali pronunciation. You don't say Brahmin, we say Bamon or something like that. Like, so there is a huge influence of Bengali. But then in the 1980s, the 90s, there was this anti-India sentiments where Hindi cinema was banned, and this Bengali script where a library was burned down. Very unfortunate incident where they were trying to sanitize in some way Manipur of Bengali influence. And there you would see that this is among the Meitei in Infal. And I'm not a Meitei person in Infal. So I spoke Manipuri, my tribal dialect. I spoke a little bit of Hindi thanks to Bollywood. And then also English, because I speak English in my home and in school. So I grew up in that kind of situation where I'm surrounded by 4 languages. I speak to different people. But then in my village, be it Bengali, be it Teli, Bihari, or be it Sikh person or Marwari or Meitei, they speak my tribal dialect. Within the urban space, there will be pocket of tribal villages where tribal dialogue is spoken. So that's very interesting. That was my childhood, my early years. But then I come to Delhi. I came to Delhi as an 18-year-old for college, and then when I came, in my time, I'm older. I mean, not old, but then I'm entering middle age, I think. So in that, yeah, let's not go down that road. So I'm saying in terms of when I first came in the 1990s. In the 1990s, Delhi, the Northeasterners' presence in Delhi was very different from now. It was more like students in Delhi University. We used to divide Delhi into 2 parts: North Campus and South Campus. We still call the. But then you will find in the early 20s onward, 2000 onwards, not only students come here. They are migrant workers. You would find in malls, you will find in beauty parlors, you'll find in offices, blue collar, in hotels, and also white collared work. You would know that everywhere you go, you'll find a face like mine, and you would see that they are everywhere. In Delhi University, for example, there's the generation, my generation, has entered the classroom. Like the university teaching professions, and so they were so we are. I'm sure when you talk about Delhi, it's very interesting. But then there is one part of it which is like one of the speakers said, what about the Urdu speaker? What about the Assamese elite and things like that? Similarly, in your presentation, there was this absence, right? Absence. Maybe perhaps we are not. Yes, yeah. I'm talking about Delhi. Delhi, the Northeasterners' presence in Delhi, and one interest you might be interested because your work is on Delhi and in languages spoken in Delhi. You would find if you go to Munirka or in Safdarjung area or in Burari area here in like next to North Campus, you would find that there are tribal churches where it's not an English church, it's not an Hindi church, or it's not a language, Delhi's language, but it is a Delhi language because they speak in their tribal dialects in their churches. So they have their businesses going on. If you just step into Munirka, it's or Safdarjung Humayunpur area, there are restaurants from different parts of Northeast. Like I was saying, you're calling it Northeasterner, but then there are miso restaurant, there are Manipuri restaurant, there is a restaurant from Sikkim and other Assamese, of course. And so you would find that these people, who are these people? Where are their social spaces? And the most engaging social spaces among the Northeasterners in Delhi are the churches, because a large population of not from the Northeastern states are Christians. So they don't go to mainline church. They don't go to Church of North India. They don't go to the churches that are already established there. They go to the tribal churches. In that, they speak their language. They can literally do business, earn livelihood, have only social circle which speak their language. But at the same time, the children would go to English school, right? They will go to English schools and they speak Hindi. Their food habits are a bit different, and then you would see that both of you talk about cuisines, and so you will see how the mothers will talk about how they like their native food, but for the kids, they pack the tiffin and a paratha, a parantha or some bread or egg, the Delhi food, right? So now you see that how in the cityscape, in the urban spaces like Delhi, there are few pockets that are fast emerging and not engaged with as yet. And this is about like 10-15 years old phenomena. And I think we need to update ourselves. As a Delhiite myself, I've been living in Delhi for 25 years, and I'm a witness of how it is evolving from students community in Delhi University, where we see only students, in college festivals, and they are very fashionably dressed, and and then they are there wherever there are student activities. But you will find now in Delhi, there are places where you will find huge festivals with thousands of people. And that is also one tribe, and different tribes have this kind of gathering in which they engage with their cultural activities and all of that. In all of that, they try to retain like the Biharis in my hometown in Infal. So when I was growing up during Holi, you have this there is a parade. They have song and dance during Holi, and the man dressed like a woman, and then they do a lot of funny things, and then they play the drums and they sing the song, and that would be Holi. And but then when Durga Puja comes, that there will be a mandal, and there will be people, gathering there. And then there are Nepali population in Nepal as well, where they have this kind of sacrifice that is done. So these are spectacle for me as a child. Okay, so now after that was my childhood experience of multilingualism in urban space of Infal. But when I have come to Delhi, all of what you have said, as a student and as a person who teaches literature, I'm familiar with that. But what is untapped as far as Delhi is concerned is largely the northeastern community and languages. Yeah, it runs into like hundreds of languages. So that would be a very, very interesting area to explore when we talk about multiculturalism in urban spaces. That's my yeah, sure, please.
See, I also feel that a lot of times, people, when it comes to languages, we are so feel so strongly about it. We want to retain the original version. Why do you have to do that? Like, I don't know about a lot of you guys, but I'm one of those who catches accents very quickly. I don't even try it. I feel weird about it at times because it might look like that, there's something wrong with you. But when I'm speaking with a Northeastern friend, and I have lots of Northeastern friends, okay, or if speaking with a friend from Bihar, or if I'm speaking with a friend from South of India, my language changes. And it's not something that I'm trying consciously. For me, at least, it happens unconsciously. And it's not just the accent I'm saying, even the sentence structure changes for me. Uh, yeah, so that is what I'm saying. Yeah. So this is what I'm saying. See, I'm saying very interesting things. Like, I observed that the sentence structure is also changing for me. Instead of saying jati hai, I would say main jati, because I'm speaking to someone who's speaking in that language. So
Just in addition to that, I have a love-hate relationship with Delhi. I love the city. I have called Delhi my home. What I like about Delhi is that people are less judgmental. People speak bad English, bad Hindi, bad native languages. People speak badly, actually, generally. So they don't really judge you. When I go to a marketplace and I speak in my broken Hindi, and I just say I want this because I don't know the name of that vegetable. Not at all. Yes. So that's the wonderful thing about Delhi city, as I think it is true of all big cities in the world. But then I agree with you that language evolves. Language evolves. My area, my research, my postdoctoral is on proverb studies, and the proverb is something that's supposed to be fixed in any language. But then what is interesting about proverb is that they try to use it is almost like a fixed unit, and the wisdom is encapsulated in that little unit. But then what happens is, as the place location changes, as people are engaging with their surroundings, these proverbs can change. They change, like you were saying, they change the word, but then the same wisdom, but then perhaps in different perspective altogether in the new scenario.
Language needs to have a certain, of course there has to be a certain standard against which you can measure things, but being so strongly adhere to these are the rules, because language keeps on changing all the time. And the fact that you have social media is affecting the kind of language we speak, the kind of language we write. I have to Google at times what my students are telling me. Just some time back, a student messaged me thanking me for something, and she used some abbreviation which I could not understand, right? But then that is something, if when these students turn into writers, right, the kind of text that they would produce will be very different, the language that they would use will be very different. So yeah.
Just to add to that, I think it is not unrelated to power structure. And I teach language as an the language and culture together. So you see that the language we speak is the language of power. When I was growing up, I spoke UK English, right, UK English. Now the dominant is US English. And we don't say that, I just printed my brother's wedding card, and I wrote 1 March 2024. And my old cousin said, why don't you write 1st March? I said, this is US English or American English. So now you see that how a language evolves along with who is powerful. It's the language of the powerful. But at the same time, the standardization of language is not, it doesn't occur in a vacuum. It's not something that you kind of carry on along as you journey. No, it is not. There is a larger scheme to it. There is a larger pattern to it. Yes. And if you understand, all of us are from English department, you will see English from Chaucer onward. How did it come to Milton? Right? How do we land up speaking like Milton? There is a political act involved in it. So we cannot really just be postmodern and say that, okay, wherever we go, we carry on like that. No, it is not. It has processes of evolution. At the same time, we would say that, of course, this processes of evolution is not unrelated to the power structure. I think, is it time? We have more questions? Anyone with more question? Yeah, please.
So this is open to both the speakers as well as Thaimai ma'am. So in such a cosmopolitan space as we talked about Delhi as well as Calcutta, do our identities or our ancestral identities, as when you'd like to quote it, do they get diluted, or there is a proliferation of multiplicity of identities? In that sense, identity is both cultural, social, and to some extent economic as well.
Thank you for raising this question. And this is related to Thaimai ma'am's presentation as well. There is a question of dilution. Now, how we look at it, it depends. This perspective, whether it is dilution or it is evolution of a language, this is according to the perspective, the situation changes. As I was telling, that before coming here, I was looking into some of the research papers which was generated by our linguistics department. This linguistics department has a very long history with Suniti Kumar Chatterjee, who was the founder professor of this department. And recently, one of our colleague, Bhashwati Ghosh, she has done some work on this multilingualism issue. And there she finds there is a very detailed data which she has generated from interviewing somewhere around 425 respondents. The main question was what a non-Bengali speaker speaks at home, among the friends, and in the classroom, because the respondents were mainly the students. And there it was found that many of the speakers, and they belong to different linguistic ethnicities. There can be Tamils, there can be Orias, there can be Hindi speakers, there can be from Northeast. Most of them, they have said that the mother tongue is taught in the house space, home, domestic space, whereas within the friends, most of them, they are using Hindi if they are not Bengali speakers, or sometimes they are even sharing jokes with the friends in Bengali. Now, this is very interesting in the sense that the first generation, they are very strong about their connection with the language. And mostly this connection is held together by the mother, who continues to speak in their uh, original ethnic language. But slowly, as you are telling, that normally you are familiar with your northeastern cuisine, but when you are packing the lunch for your boy or girl, you are putting some paratha as well. So here comes the change, that the new generation, they start to, when they are talking with their friends, they start picking up the local tidbits, first the slangs, and then starting to share other cultural idioms. And in this manner, if we talk about dilution or we talk about evolution of the language, this happens. So there is a generational gap or generational approach towards the language, and how the community interacts with the other community. And in this manner, the changes within the language, and language is continuously evolving. I will end here with a note that I will be talking about this particular thing when I will be talking from 7 o'clock onwards, when I will be talking about Suniti Chattopadhyay. Because Suniti Chattopadhyay was the person who was the opinion that Bazaar Hindi, not the Khadi Boli, but the Bazaar Hindi should be the lingua franca for Bengal, for whole India, and that too, his suggestion was, if possible, it should be in Roman script, so that no people can have any problem with the some people at those days, in those days, they had a problem with Devanagari script, Devanagari Urdu. There was a tussle. So his suggestion was to cut the Gordian knot of the language, take Bazaar Hindi, which is a very very diverse and very very kind of evolving kind of language. भात खाता हूं, दाल खाती हूं. But gender changes, but for normal people like me, for me भात और दाल दोनों ही मैं खाता हूं. So without transcending this grammatical barrier, he is talking about this particular diverse language as the Bazaar Hindustani, which he suggested to be taken up as the lingua franca. But that I will be talking sometimes later.
Very quickly add to what you're saying, Bazaar Hindi. Uh, when you actually look at the kind of Hindi that we read in our schools, the kind of Hindi that we read in our books, it's actually very different from the kind of Hindi that we speak. And this is probably one of the reasons why people, you're not interested in the language probably anymore. I'm just guessing, and when it comes to language, I'm of the opinion that instead of seeing it as something which takes you back or dilutes thing, you should look at it as something which is liberating. It's just, there are these processes. Language, if language changes, what she was saying, that you're using the US version rather than the UK version. We were using the UK version because British were here. We are moving to the US version because there are more and more people going into IT and they are doing jobs in the US. Right. So you have what you have to look at instead of, let's say, judging it or being very, very touchy about it, is to see what are the processes which go into making a language what it is. You
Yeah.
know, so I think with that I would
Yeah,
like
thank
to
you
thank
so
everyone.
much. Thank you so much. Just a last note from me. I agree with both the speakers, and particularly, I really liked the fact that you're going to speak about it in at 7 o'clock. So now, just to introduce you to a pidgin to categorize categorization, and many of you may not be familiar with what we call Nagamis. Nagamis. If you ask me what Nagamis is, it is. The corrupt Assamese. And Assamese is considered as corrupt Hindi. So it is like 3 or 4 steps away from what you read in your textbooks. So now, but there is a huge campaign in Nagaland to make Nagamis as the standard language. It is supposed to be what we call the bazaar language. Nagamis, there is nothing as Nagamis. There is no tribe as Nagamis because Naga comprises of many, many, many tribes, and each of them have different dialects. Within the same tribe, they would have village version of the different villages would have different version of the same dialect and all of that. So how do you, this small state of Nagaland, how do we have a linguistic homogeneous, kind of a standard language? We have nothing but that whatever corrupt kind of a removed, 4 times removed from Hindi. But then there is a huge campaign because if you watch the Nagaland television or interview or even the song and popular culture as such, you would see that they are usually communicating in Nagamis. And there is no grammar book as yet, there is no dictionary as yet, but then it is in the process of becoming a standard language. So this is a very good example of how languages become standardized. And these are the examples that I think we have to engage with when it comes to multilingual culture in urban spaces in India. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time. Thank you, speakers.
Thank you, our esteemed guest. Now I request Ms. Tania to kindly present a small token of thank you to our esteemed guests. On behalf of National Book Trust India, I would like to thank our esteemed guests for such a wonderful session and our audience present here. Thank you so much.